Thank you, David.
Very good. So Parshas Chukas is actually a short parsha because it's a parsha that is sometimes joined with Balak, but when it's a leap year and we have some extra Shabbosim to fill with Parshias, we break up more Parshias and read them separately. Nevertheless, it has a lot of information in it, a lot of stories, starting with the Para Aduma, which is the red heifer that atones for the sin of the golden calf. And it is the red heifer that is burned, the ashes of which are used to purify a person who became impure through the dead. Then we read about Miriam's passing. And then we read about the Jewish people being thirsty for water because the well that they drank from in the desert was in the merit of Miriam when she passed to stop working. The Jewish people complained. Hashem told Moshe to speak to the rock. Unfortunately, he hit the rock instead of speaking to it, and it was decreed that he and Aaron should both pass away in the desert. Then they want to pass through the land of Edom. He forbids them to enter the land. They have to go around it. And the people complain about all this traveling and journeying, even though they're really close to the end of their time in the desert. And really, they should have been okay with it. Oh, actually, sorry, I skipped one. Aaron passes away and he's buried on Hor HaHor. And the his son, his oldest surviving son, because two of his sons passed away, his oldest surviving son takes over, Elazar HaKohen. Then there's an incident where the Jewish people have a woman taken captive, a servant woman, and they go to war to get her back. And then finally, we come to the part that we are going to speak about. In the handout, I confused some of the verses and I copied and pasted them a little bit improperly. But anyway, here's how it starts. Vayisu me'ahar derech yamsuf lisboi v'eretz Edom, v'tiktzar nefesh ha'am badorach. They traveled from Hor HaHor, that's the mountain where Aaron was buried, by way of the Sea of Reeds, to go around the land of Edom, that's the one who didn't let them through. And the people got impatient as a result of the journey. The people spoke against Hashem and Moshe. Remember, these are the people who were not really involved in all the complaints in the beginning of their time in the desert, because this is already 40 years later, and that generation had already passed away. And this is the next generation. Some of them were alive, but were young, and some of them were not even alive at all. Yet, unfortunately, they are continuing in the complaining ways of their ancestors. And they say, Lama ha'elisunu mimitzrayim. Why did you take us out of Egypt? Lamos bamidbar, to die in the desert. Ki ein lechem ve'ein mayim. We have no bread, we have no water. I'm not sure what they're complaining about with bread and water, actually, because they got mun. I guess they wanted real bread. And they did have water too after Moshe hit the rock. It continued to work. Not sure what that was about. Nafshenu kotza balechem hakloikel. And we are sick and tired of the mun, which they call rotten bread, because they never had to excrete when they ate the mun. It was completely absorbed in their stomachs. So they were nervous that it was not healthy, there was something wrong with it. Of course, it was such a perfect bread that you didn't have to excrete anything because it had no waste. So really, it was a miraculous bread, and their complaints were completely without basis whatsoever. Vayishalach Hashem ba'amas anachoshim hasrofim. Vaynashchu es ha'om. Vayomas amrov mi-Yisrael. Hashem sent against the people venomous snakes. They bit the people, and many people of Israel died. Basically, they were using their mouths and their tongues to complain for no reason whatsoever. Just because they were not in a good mood, they had a bad day, they had to travel, and so on and so forth. So they were looking for something to complain about, but really there was no basis for it. So they were punished with the mouth of the snake and the venomous snakes. Moshe, the people came to Moshe. And they said, Chatanu, we have sinned. Ki dibarnu b'Hashem v'avach, we spoke against Hashem and against you. Hispalel el Hashem, daven to Hashem. V'yaser me'aleinu es hanachash, remove the snake from us. V'yispalel Moshe ba'ada al Moshe, daven for the people. We'll learn the Rashi on that verse in a moment. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe, Aseh lecha soraf, make for yourself a serpent. V'simoy soy al nes, and place it on a pole. V'haya kol hanashuch, whoever gets bitten, v'ra'ah isay v'chay will see it and live. Vayas Moshe nachash nachoshas, Moshe made a copper snake. Vayisimei al nes, and he put it on the pole. V'haya, and it was im nashach hanachoshas ish. If the snake bit a man, he bit el nachash hanachoshas v'chay, he would look at the copper snake and he would live. So this is why you have the picture of the snake on the pharmacies in Israel and probably in other countries too. It represents healing because of this story. So why did the healing have to come through a snake and looking up at it and all of that? We'll discuss that later. But what we're going to focus on now is one Rashi. Very short Rashi. But we're going to talk about not just the Rashi, but the details of the language in Rashi. Vayispal Moshe, Moshe davened. Rashi in verse 7. Mikan, from here, we understand, right? Based on this, we learn. Lemi shemavaksha mimenu, that a person who is requested of them, shelo yehe achzori milimcho, he should not be so cruel from forgiving. Again, the Hebrew is achzori milimcho. He should not be cruel from forgiving. Meaning to say, in the area of forgiveness, which is what he's being asked to do, he should not be cruel from forgiving. Meaning to say, he should forgive. Another version of the Rashi says, Shelo yehei achzori limcho. He should not be cruel to forgive. Obviously, the second version has to be understood. What does it mean he should not be cruel to forgive? He should not be cruel not to forgive. To forgive is not cruelty. To forgive is good. So it's possible that that's why the other version of Rashi is the more prevalent one, where they add the word mem, so that it should read milimcha, from forgiving, meaning to say from not forgiving. Okay, that's the Rashi. Before we get into the details of milimcha or limcha, which is from forgiving or to forgive, first the Rebbe discusses the word mikan, from here. From here means that this is where we learn it from. This is it. This is the source. In fact,
Rabbi,
in the Medrash,
wouldn't the source have been the case of Miriam, where he davened for his sister, even though she spoke against him about his
I
His
hear your
question.
question. I hear your question. The Rebbe is going to go further back and going to ask from Abraham. But my guess, the Rebbe does not address about Miriam. My guess is that over there, Aaron had a particular argument that was relevant to that case specifically. Because Aaron said, Al nasi kames asher b'tzeise merechem imoy vayeochel chatzi b'sorah. That if our sister remains a leper, which is like a dead person, then it will be as if half our flesh is consumed, meaning to say, we both came from the same womb, all three of us. She's our sister, basically. So if one of us dies, it's as if half of us dies, basically. So it was a particular argument that she's your sister, and you have to basically daven for her, which obviously Moshe did, but maybe it's not a source so much for forgiving everybody. But there is an earlier source where we see the same concept, and that source is actually also quoted in the Medrash. In the Medrash, which is the source of this Rashi, it says, V'chein hu oimer, and so too the verse says, and then it goes ahead and quotes the verse in Genesis 20:17, otherwise known as Parshas Vayera, where it says, Vayispalel Avraham el Elokim. Avram daven to Hashem. Vayirpa Elokim asav Melech v'esishte v'amhoisov vayeledu. Hashem healed Avimelech and his wife. Interesting that he only had one wife, even though he was a king in those days. You would think he would have a whole harem. But anyway, Avimelech and his wife and their maidservants, and they bore, here it says they bore children, but according to the commentaries, it's not about children, it's about the fact that all of their orifices were blocked, they could not go to the bathroom, and Veyeledu means they were unblocked, they were able to relieve themselves. So that, of course, comes after Avimelech had abducted Sarah and tried to abuse her. He was stopped by doing so. Hashem prevented him and told him basically that she's a married woman. So he did actually grope her, according to the sages, but he never actually had relations with her because Hashem prevented him from doing so. And he was punished, like we said, and his whole family. They got this illness that they could not excrete. And Hashem told Avimelech to return her, and that Avram would daven for him. And that's exactly what happened. That Avram davened for him, as we see.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I still hold with what I said because the way Rashi explains it, it says to someone who is, someone who has harmed you, you should not hold back. You shouldn't be a miser in davening for their welfare.
Yes.
So you're talking one-on-one, which is the same situation with Miriam and Moshe, which is the same situation as Abraham and Avimelech. So it's one-on-one. It's not, you know, I would say it doesn't carry all the way to everyone, but something that you should learn from.
Right. Well, we could learn from Moshe, certainly, but the parallel that he's trying to draw, I think he wants to draw from a person who was not related. Because you could argue that it was a special thing, even though, of course, Moshe would have done it for everybody. But I think that's why the Rebbe specifically asks about the pasuk with Avram. The Medrash also only quotes Avram. The Medrash does not quote Moshe. Yes, Mordechai.
Yeah, isn't there also a medrash that he was so yeah, that he was so infatuated with Sarah that he made a Sarah mannequin?
That he made what? Sorry.
A, s- a, a Sarah mannequin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That I didn't know. That's pretty gross, but I didn't know
Yeah, it is.
that.
Got here just in time. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, welcome. So the question is, why does Rashi say mikan? That the idea of forgiving somebody and not being cruel to not forgive is learned from Moshe and the Jewish people in this week's Parsha, when it would seem that it could be learned from Avraham and Sarah. So, first of all, it could be that maybe Avimelech really didn't do a sin. After all, Avraham said that it was his sister. So, I mean, he still abducted her, and, it's kind of not nice to just take a woman without her permission. But technically, in his mind, she was not Avram's wife, so he wasn't really doing anything against Avraham.
Who is that?
So then maybe Avram didn't really have to forgive. But we do see that he felt the need to pay Avraham off. I didn't quote the whole story, but in Bereshis, it says that he gave him 1,000 silver pieces. And he said it's a ksus einayim. It's like to cover up so that people shouldn't say that I just abused you and then threw you out. This is to show that it was done in an honorable way, and I'm apologizing and I'm paying for it. So it seems that he did understand that he had done something wrong, and that Avraham, so to speak, had the right to hold it against him. Yet Avraham did not, as we said, and he went ahead and he davened for Avimelech. So once again, back to the question, why does Rashi say that the source for this is in this parsha? Any ideas? I'm open to ideas. If anybody has any.
Repeat the question again.
Why does Rashi say that the source for forgiving somebody and not holding back from forgiveness is in this week's parsha, when we seem to have a source for it with the story of Avraham?
That Abraham forgave Paro
Avimelech.
for,
Avimelech.
I'm sorry,
Avimelech.
Avimelech,
Exactly.
for anything that he said or intimated or whatever. There's a payment for any publicity coming out of here.
But did he?
You're withdrawing.
Did Avimelech ask Abraham?
Did Avimelech ask Avraham for forgiveness? That's an interesting question, actually. We don't find anywhere explicitly in the Chumash
But here
that he asked him.
Here the
Well,
people.
what did he do? He's asking forgiveness for what?
For taking his wife,
Sarah.
for abducting his wife.
Yeah, but he didn't know it was his wife. He didn't know it was the wife.
Exactly.
So
but in
for
the end,
taking Sarah,
in
for
the
abducting
end,
a woman, okay.
In the end, he did pay Avram off, so he understood that he had done something wrong towards him, even though he excused himself. So he didn't feel he was fully responsible, but he still felt that he was somewhat responsible. He never did apologize, by the way. We don't find anywhere that he apologized. In the pasuk here, it does say, "Ki dibarnu b'Hashem vavoch."
Right.
We sinned, we spoke against you, and so on. So here they do actually ask for forgiveness. In the case of Avram, he does not ask for forgiveness. On the contrary, he makes excuses. And he says, it's kind of your fault that you didn't tell me. But in the end of the day, we do see that Avram forgave him, despite him not asking for it, from the very fact that he davened for him. Although one could argue, well, maybe he davened for him without forgiving him. Maybe he
But
still.
that was for the negah. That was for the punishment that Hashem was giving him.
Well, he davened that Hashem should remove the punishment.
Right.
So the thing is that the assumption is, if he davened for him, he forgave him. Just like in this pasuk, where Rashi says, "Mikan shelo yehi achzori milimchal," where you see from here that you should not be cruel from forgiving, based on the fact that Moshe davened. It's self-understood that if he davened for the people that had just riled up against him, he was obviously forgiving them. So based on that, we see that Avraham did forgive Avimelech, even though Avimelech didn't ask for it, true, but he did forgive him. So why, back to the question, why is it mikan? Shelo yehi achzor milimcha. You should not be cruel from forgiving, when we could have learned it from Abraham. Okay, my friends, so here we go with the Rebbe's explanation. 3 levels of forgiveness. There are 3 levels of forgiveness that a person can give somebody else. First of all, they could say, you know what? I don't want to be the source and the cause of somebody else's suffering. I know that they hurt me, and I know that based on their sin towards me, they deserve to be punished. I don't want to be the one who is a cause for their punishment. The fact that I'm holding on to my anger at them is the cause of their punishment. So therefore, I am going to forgive them so that they shouldn't be punished. That's all. I don't want them punished on my behalf. That's kind of forgiveness, but it's not full forgiveness, because the person is not actually forgiving the sin completely. The person actually still is upset at the person in their heart. They haven't really gotten over it. It really still bothers them. But please Hashem, don't punish them because of me. It shouldn't be because of me. I mean, if he gets punished, maybe I wouldn't be so mad. But it shouldn't be for me. So that's number 1. That's really very basic level forgiveness.
Don't use up my credits punishing him.
Something like that.
You're asking Hashem to punish them?
No, I'm not asking him to.
No, you didn't, but originally you did.
No, even if I didn't ask, I just know that there's a system in place of reward and punishment. Even if I didn't ask for it, Hashem might decide, please don't do it for me. So that's number 1. Very basic level, not a very high level forgiveness. The second level forgiveness is where the person actually completely forgives the person, and they say, you know what, I'm putting it behind us. I'm not going to hold it against him. I'm forgetting about it. That's it. Nothing. We'll pretend it never happened. Then there's an even higher level forgiveness. The highest level of forgiveness is, just like it says, that if a person does a sin and he does tshuva, he can become even closer to Hashem than he was before the tshuva. Bal tshuva can be on a higher level than a tzaddik. A person who does tshuva out of love, that sin can be turned into a mitzvah, because they establish a deeper level of relationship with Hashem. So the highest level forgiveness, my friends, is not only when you forgive the person and don't consider that they sinned against you, but you establish a relationship that's even stronger than it was before. You become deeper friends after the fight. Sometimes it happens that people fight, but when they make up, they become even better friends because they realize that their friendship is deeper than that issue. And they can overcome that issue and other issues because they really have a deep friendship. So it can actually enhance it. That's the highest level. Rashi over here is talking about the highest level forgiveness. And this can be understood from the language of Rashi. Because Rashi says, Shelo yehe achzori mi limchol, that he should not be cruel from forgiving. That means that within forgiveness, there is forgiveness, right? There is forgiveness. Within forgiveness, milimcho, within forgiveness, he should not be cruel. You can forgive up to different levels of forgiveness. He should not be cruel within forgiveness. He should forgive completely. And now, my friends, we come to the other version of Rashi, which is Shelo yeh achzori limchoil. He should not be cruel to forgive. What does that mean? He shouldn't be cruel to forgive. That doesn't even make sense. That's why the editors of Rashi put in the mem. They couldn't handle that Rashi said he shouldn't be cruel to forgive because they could not understand what Rashi meant. So they put in a mem. They said probably when they were copying Rashi's words, they missed a mem. We're going to correct it and we're going to fix it. Very often when you try to fix something that's not broken, you actually break it. So it's possible, says the Rebbe, that the original language of Rashi was without the mem, that you should not be cruel to forgive. And it's referring to forgiving improperly. Do not be cruel to forgive improperly and just to say he shouldn't be punished for me, but keeping the hurt in your heart and really not forgiving deep down. That's called cruel. Even though that person is not going to be affected, he's not going to be punished, but you have a problem. You have a problem. You are cruel. The fact that you are holding on to that hurt, that's a sign of your cruelty. That's a sign that you're not being truly kind. If you were truly kind, you would find a way to actually forgive, to actually not hold it against them whatsoever. Now, Rashi says mikan. This is the source for that. We cannot learn it from the story of Avraham, but we can learn it from here. What's the difference? By Avraham, we find that Avraham davened and the people were cured. Avraham davened and the people were cured. That's all we find. We don't know what level of forgiveness he gave to them. All we know is that they were cured. It's possible that he didn't forgive them fully, that he just didn't want them to be punished on his behalf, and therefore he davened for them. We don't see anywhere that his davening was for anything more than that they should be cured. This is different in the case of Moshe and the people. If you look at the verse carefully, in the Hebrew it says, Vayispalel Moshe be'ad ha'om. Moshe davened on behalf of the people. The indication is that he didn't just daven that they should be cured from this particular problem and that the snake should stop biting or they should be cured from it. He davened in a general way for the people. And this is, of course, because Moshe Rabbeinu was the leader of the people, and he loved those people, and therefore he made a general davening for them. And that's why we find that in the response that Hashem gave to Moshe about how they should be cured, that the response went above and beyond just healing them. Because really, when somebody sins and they get punished, and you daven for them that they shouldn't get punished, are you really helping them? For argument's sake, are you really helping them? They're getting punished because they did something wrong. And the punishment is supposed to wake them up so that they come to the realization that they did something wrong. And now you're saying, just Hashem, please take away the punishment. But what's worse, the sin or the punishment? The sin is obviously worse.
What's worse, actually, Rebbe,
Yes,
is you second guessing Hashem. That you are saying, here's what you decreed, but I think it should be different. Please listen to me.
the thing is that you can ask that about any time you daven. Whenever you daven, you could ask that.
Well,
Because you're saying, Hashem, I know this and that is what's going on, but I think you should change it and do the other. That's a general question. But just focusing on this particular case, what is going to be accomplished if he's healed, but if the sin is in place? If the point of the punishment is to correct the sin? And the answer is, well, in general, just to address what you're saying, Isaac, in general, what we should daven for is that not just the punishment should be averted, but that the person should learn a lesson from that punishment already, and that should be sufficient, and he shouldn't.
It should work out best for all concerned, really. I mean, that's
exactly.
I found, yeah. When it came to my mother davening at that time, I realized, what are you asking for? You're asking things should change? You really can't ask that things should change, but that the perceptions should change. The same events can happen, and yet it is perceived differently by everybody involved.
Yep.
So that's
Rabbi,
it.
question.
Yep.
I mean, the way I could read it that Moshe davened, okay? But Hashem's response is, okay, in the same way that they were punished, I will remove the punishment. And now I'm going to give, which means he could have just said, okay, snakes go away.
Exactly.
But he turned around
and people
said,
healed, whoever was bitten already. But yes,
right. But he then turned around and said and added these extra things to create the pole with the picture of this the caduceus, if you want to call it, and for them to look. So he's going to me, it looked like he's going beyond what Moshe was asking, because Moshe could have just said, Elna refana lahem, elna refana lahem, elna refana lahem, just in the same way that he did for his sister, which he didn't do.
Exactly. So over here, there was something greater than that. Because the Gemara says that the point of the snake was that they should look up to Hashem and subdue their hearts to Hashem. That's why it's put up on a pole, so that they should recognize that their Yeshua, their salvation comes from Hashem. Of course, you could ask, why do they have to put the snake up on the pole? Why can't he just say, look up at Hashem and daven? So the idea is, and this is what the Alter Rebbe explains in his Likutei Torah on the Parsha, Chassidus on the Parsha, he explains the point is to look up at Hashem and see that the snake is from Hashem. That's the point. That's why the snake is on top of the pole, but at the same time, they're looking up at Hashem, and they're seeing that the snake and everything that comes down here in this war that appears to be negative,
Even the Nachash.
punishing, this is really from Hashem, and it's really for the best, and there's nothing bad in this world. It's all part of Hashem's plan.
Why not
That
be a
awareness.
reminder?
I'm sorry?
Why can't it be just a reminder? You did bad, Hashem brought the snakes. The snakes is a reminder of your stupidity, but when you look up, Hashem has forgiven you.
Right, but when you're looking up, it's not enough to just look up. They looked up at the snake at the same time that they were looking up.
To remind them of what they did wrong.
No, to remind them of the snakes. You can remember that there was a snake invasion back when, but not why it came. If you're saying that this is a way of looking at even the Nachash, even the worst thing that you picture, the original Nachash, also is from Hashem. It's part of the package.
Right. What I'm saying is that it's reminding you that you did something wrong. The snakes came to remind you did something wrong. And then now that you're looking at this snake, it's reminding you that you did something wrong, but Hashem has taken that away and given you a refuah.
But that's a different lesson. That's a different lesson. That you got punished because you're remembering that. Here it's remember even the bad. Forget about this story. Anytime you see that what you think is bad is also from Hashem.
Right. Those two lessons are both good. And the Rebbe actually does not go into those details in this sefer. I just mentioned it because I brought it up. But the point is, either way, the copper snake being put on a pole is supposed to correct the problem from the first place. And supposed to make sure they don't repeat it because they're connecting to Hashem in a deeper way. And that is as a result of Moshe's davening, not just for their healing, but ba'ad ha'am, a general davening. And that's why Hashem didn't just heal them, but brought them to have a deeper relationship with Hashem.
Yeah, I'm the more you're talking, the more it sort of reminds me of, when we're saying the Shema, and we're talking about, the Techelet is supposed to remind you of the waters of the ocean. The waters of the ocean is to remind you of the color of the throne of Hashem, etc. And I'm saying that this is in fact doing something similar to that. It's making a connection of something that you did that was incorrect, which is now being corrected, and for you to look up and understand, when you look at this thing, understand what it's all about. That's the reason why you're looking up.
Yes, I hear. Either way, the Jewish people were correcting their sin through looking up at the snake.
Yeah.
So we'll just look at the Rambam, which is also seems to be talking about two levels of forgiveness. Two different Rambams talking about forgiving a person. And the language is somewhat different. And based on this, the Rebbe suggests that it's talking about these two levels of forgiveness. The Rambam in Laws of Chovel Umazik, Laws of Damaging, says, it is forbidden for the person who suffered the injury to be cruel and not to forgive the one who caused the injury. This is not the course of behavior for a descendant of Israel. Instead, since the person who caused the injury asks and pleads of him for forgiveness, once or twice, and he knows that he has repented from his sins and regrets his evil deeds, he should forgive him. Whoever hastens to grant forgiveness is praiseworthy and is regarded favorably by the sages. So here he mentions that the person should ask for it once or twice, and he knows that he's repented from the sin and regrets his evil deeds. That's when you're expected to forgive. Before that, not necessarily. Why should I forgive? Stam, a guy who hurt me, damaged me, insulted me, who knows what he did. If he doesn't ask at least once, twice is even better, and show that he regrets it, I mean, other than that, why should I forgive him? So that's in the laws of damaging, and that's actually the halacha. You don't have to forgive somebody if they don't ask for forgiveness. And technically, if they ask once, twice, and three times, if you don't forgive, then it's on you. But after once, you don't have to forgive right away. You can wait for a second time, and even for a third time if necessary, but not more than three. In the laws of tshuva, however,
You use the same terminology in both.
oh no, I pasted the wrong thing. Okay, I'm gonna have to give it to you orally because I pasted the wrong thing twice. Sorry. Technology has its drawbacks. Copy and paste is good, but doesn't always get you the right text. Okay, here's the text. I'm just going to read it for you. It is forbidden for a person to be cruel and refuse to be appeased. Rather, he should be easily pacified, but hard to anger. When the person who wronged him asks for forgiveness, he should forgive him with a complete heart and a willing spirit. Even if he aggravated and wronged him severely, he should not seek revenge or bear a grudge. This is the path of the seed of Israel and their upright spirit. In contrast, the insensitive Gentiles do not act in this manner. Rather, their wrath is preserved forever. Similarly, because the Givonites did not forgive and refused to be appeased, the prophet describes them as follows. The Givonites are not among the children of Israel. So here, he doesn't talk about once or twice. And he also adds a complete heart or a willing spirit. And he also talks about not bearing a grudge. So this is a little bit of a higher level tshuva, because it's in the laws of tshuva, and it's where the person who is going to be forgiven wants to achieve a higher level of forgiveness. Not just that he doesn't want to be punished, but he wants to actually his sin to be wiped away completely. And for that, it is necessary for the person who was wrong to completely wipe it away. That's why he mentions not bearing a grudge, that he should actually wipe it away as if it never happened. This is the higher level of tshuva that we mentioned earlier, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu did, which is perhaps a little bit stronger than what Avraham did. So just to wrap it up, because I know David is going to ask for a brief recap. The recap is that there's three levels of forgiveness. One is that the person shouldn't be punished on your behalf. Two is completely wipe it away as if it never happened. Three is establish a relationship in an even closer way. Moshe Rabbeinu davened for them not just to be healed, but a general prayer. That means he completely wiped it away. Perhaps he even came to a deeper connection to them. And that's learned from here. That's why it says, milimcho, from forgiveness. Don't be stingy in forgiveness. Forgive completely. And now with a 2-minute warning, I have to share with you a story that I heard last night, which is a great story.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there a connection between Avimelech, whose reproductive vessels were blocked, and the Jews that were complaining about the mun because nothing was going through their digestive system?
I don't know. They're both in the same shir. That's the connection. Both in the same sicha, both in the same medrash. But other than that, I don't know.
And they
Was it
both
the
have
same?
They
Was it
both
the
have
same
bodily
machla?
organs. Or they both have bodily vessels that,
I
like, you know,
understand, but I
two
don't know.
tubes that
I
were
know.
affected.
I don't know.
Were they the same?
No, the man was absorbed. There was no blockage.
No, I'm saying the machla that they suffered from.
No,
Avimelech was
suffer.
one,
One
and
was
The
one was
man did not cause
reproductive
any
and one was
machla.
food.
Yeah, but the
was-
man did not cause any machla. There was no blockage. It just was there was nothing to excrete. Anyway, but I promised a story, so I want to deliver. The Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Lubavitch Rebbe, went to Chicago, and one of his purposes was to raise funds for Lubavitch. And he was told there's a certain rich person who never gives anybody anything. Don't bother. He was a wealthy person in the textile business, and you shouldn't bother going. The previous Rebbe said, no, I want to go. So they brought him there, and the man said to the previous Rebbe, why did you come here? Like, I mean, I don't give charity anyway, so why did you bother coming here? So the previous Rebbe said, I heard that you are really an expert in garments and clothing, and I have a button that I need sewn back onto my kapota. Can you please sew my button onto my kapota? So the man said, you really traveled here, all the way here, just to have a button put onto your kapota? So the previous Rebbe said, did your neshama really come down all the way from heaven just to sew buttons? Is that why it's here? That was the line. I don't know if he gave a donation or not, but that was the line. Okay, my
Great.
friends, I wish you all a good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
fine. Thank you, Rebbe.
Good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.